Hello, and welcome to Raise the Bar, the Sky High and Fly Jump Camps podcast. I am your host, Troy Haynes, and I am introducing our guest this evening. We are here on Wednesday, July 12th, and it's around 6:30 on the West Coast, which means it's 9:30 back on the East Coast, where Coach Devin Bradham is. He's joining us tonight. And give you a little background about Devin. He's a New Jersey product. He did his collegiate jumping at Penn State. He was 6'10" in high school and was a scholarship athlete at Penn State, jumped 7'1" and a half while he was there. And we're going to hear about his coaching exploits. He's coached the high, long, and triple at various times. And we are going to then listen to whatever comes up. I don't know if we'll be talking about technique or training or, sports psychology, nutrition, the state of track and field, one of my favorite pet peeves of late. And we'll just wait and see how that goes. But be ready. I've seen a lot of great posts from Devin. I know he's got a lot of energy. So get ready to have fun here on Raise the Bar, and we'll be right back with that.
I go by
Dev. And dude, I've been watching your stuff for a couple years, and every time I see you, it's all high quality stuff. So I know you know what you're doing.
I like to think so, honestly. I always use this quote with my kids when something clicks for them. I always go, all right, I can coach.
Yeah.
I think I know how to coach now.
Yeah. I always use the one. I go, I wish it's too bad you don't have somebody who knows what they're doing to help you.
Right.
When something goes right, it's like it's cool. It's I think that's the nub of everything, right? Is get better. Let me do my intro here first. This is just going to come out like this, but we're here today. This is welcome to Sky High and Fly's Jump Camps podcast, Raise the Bar. I'm your host, Troy Haynes, and we have Devin Bradham with us, who is goes by Dev. He's Coach Dev, and I see him all the time on my Instagram feed. That's how I came across his body of work. You're a former Penn State high jumper that you graduated in 2019, right? So it's only been 4 years. So he's already been coaching at what the first place that you listed was which place, Coach? Where'd you start your career?
For college coaching wise?
Yeah.
I started my first college job at Rider University. I started that back in 2021.
Now, where is Rider for those of us that aren't familiar with Rider University?
Rider is in Central Jersey, the Trenton area. It's actually in Lawrenceville specifically. I just call it North Jersey because if you're from Jersey, then you know there's only North and South. There's no Central unless you're in, so then you call it Central. But I'd say it's more North.
Okay. That's like the Journey song. They go, born and raised in South Detroit. And according to everybody, there's no such place as South Detroit. They just made it up because they're a band from San Francisco.
Exactly.
Born and raised in South Detroit. So, all right. So now, are you originally from Jersey? You sound like you know it and know it well. Was that because you got there and coached, or you were from there?
Yeah. Yep. So I live in South Jersey. So about 48 to 50 minutes from Rider University. But I was born and raised here. Went to high school in Jersey. Middle school, everything. Only time I was ever out of Jersey was when I went to college at Penn State. Other than that, I've been here for my entire life.
Now you're back and you're living on the East Coast and you're rock and rolling.
Exactly.
So, and that's where you're at now, is Rider?
Yes.
Okay, so you're still there.
No. So currently, I'm no longer at Rider. I'm actually kind of an open for other positions right now. And I left Rider this year at the end of May.
Okay. So this was your last year at Rider, and you're out searching. Sounds like everybody. I do the same almost every year. It's not that I'm looking for greener pastures. I mean, maybe it is, as the grass is always greener on the other side or whatever, but maybe a better situation, a better place to train, maybe the availability for more people to come there, any of those things.
Better opportunity overall.
Yeah. Well, I always start like in April too, like laying the groundwork, and then nothing seems to happen until whoever's ready it finally pulls the trigger. And it usually it's after I've decided that I'm no longer going to have a new job the following year, that something will come up later.
Just goes.
Somebody goes, oh yeah, so-and-so just left and we need this. And you're like, okay, what can you offer me? you know.
Right, right.
So,
You know what's funny is I'm learning that this whole college coaching process of trying to find a new location, how difficult it is. But like you said, like the last moment when you're like, all right, maybe I should just, look somewhere else or just kind of consider maybe coaching the following year, something pops up. Like there was a point, I would say last month, where I was kind of like, dang, nothing's opening up to where like it attracts to me. So I'm like, who knows? Maybe I could be taking a year off of coaching for all we know. And
right.
then the next day, 4 other jobs pop up, and I'm like, oh, well,
Yeah.
never mind.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's interesting to me because I really, it sounds weird. We've had this discussion so many times on the podcast, the death of track and field in the US, which I always call, the body's already dead. You just can't smell the decomposition yet. And it's like
Right.
Tony Holler was on recently. I don't know if you know him, the Feed the Cats guy from Illinois. But he was talking about, he goes, tracks everybody's red-haired stepchild sport. It's like, the basketball players do it when they're out of season, soccer out of season. If volleyball players are going to do it, they're in season, football, whatever. It's always somebody's second or third sport. And even though they like it,
Right.
and they realize that it's good for them, for their other sports, blah, blah, blah. It's like, we just don't have the funding. We don't have this, we don't have that. And the more I'm getting into it, I've been bemoaning this fact for the last 2 or 3 years doing the podcast now. And we've talked about it, but it's like the college level, like you're saying, it's just this morass of unorganization and no cohesiveness. And, I'm watching people do their jobs. If you're the head coach, how do you go about putting together a staff? How are you going to pay them? How are you going to get any good, really good assistant coaches that are going to stay? Like if you could find someone who's got talent like yourself, you're coming out of Penn State, you jumped 7 feet, 1.5 in college, you were a 6'10" jumper in high school. So you placed high at your state meet in high school, you go to Penn State, you have a great career, you get awards, you're a part of the Big Ten championship team, which is all awesome stuff, by the way. And, you come out and you're ready to rock and roll. Now you have the advantage of you went right into it. Like I foolishly left school and was like, I didn't really think of myself as a coaching type yet. And I was still training because I was 22 years old and I'm thinking, well, the Olympics is coming around again. 88 was just a year or two later. I graduated in 86. So I'm like, hey, I got to get a couple more inches. I go to the trials. Right. So I just was disconnected from coaching for just a little bit. And then when I did start, I was still kind of trying to be an athlete. So it was like, I found I enjoyed it and I had some aptitude for it. But at the same time, I wasn't thinking career. I was not thinking, how can I do this? And maybe part of the reason is the bloom was off the rose for me. Like I had a roommate, and Dwayne, if you're out there, Dwayne Washington was my roommate at UCLA. He was a 53-foot triple jumper. My freshman year, we used to sit around and just talk, late at night about, oh yeah, man, I want to do this. I want to break this record. I want to make it to the trials. I want to go to the Olympics. And I was young enough, 1982. I'll tell you how old I am. 1982 was my freshman year at UCLA. And I mean, Bruce Jenner was on a Wheaties box back in 76. So that was 8 years, 6 years before. And I was a kid in 76. I was 12 years old. I was watching Bruce Jenner win the decathlon, big buff Bruce Jenner. And, it was just, as a kid, we're just like, dude, I could win a gold medal. I mean, I still watch the Olympics every time. And when someone steps on the podium from the US, I tear up. I'm just like, dude, I want to be on the box. I want to get my medal. I want everybody to listen to my national anthem. I mean, all those things. I want to be on the Wheaties box. I want to get endorsements. It's like, and I realized after struggling to get there, first of all, and doing it without drugs, which is a topic that we have not talked about on this show yet, but someday it'll rear its ugly head. But doing it clean and getting to the highest levels and all that, even if achieved, you can't really make any money at track and field. I'm here to tell everybody, it doesn't matter how good you are. I mean, I keep looking at all these guys, Mike Powell, guys that I know that are great athletes, Carl Lewis, and not that they're not making money, not that they're not doing well, but compared to the mega millions that are out there in other sports, we're lagging way behind,
So it's kind of crazy. Like you said, like you could be a top-notch athlete, you could be taking home those gold, silver medals, but you're only walking out with a measly check for all the work you've put in. But you've got, like you said, the mega million stars like basketball or, baseball who don't even play a game, but are
Yeah.
making more than 500K for sitting on a bench and practicing. Like, it's just sad how the money isn't in our sport when it really should be because of how much the sport gives back.
Yeah. Oh, it's a travesty, but we got. I'm sure if somebody is a regular listener to the podcast, and I pray that you are, and they're like, there he goes again, talking about this. But it's like, I'm like, why aren't there better qualified coaches and everything? But it's like the filter down effect is not happening. There's no money coming in because there's no television. If there's no television and nobody's watching you, you can't generate that kind of income. You need people that are going, hey, we need to see this. This is amazing. We need to sell this product to so-and-so. I remember when the Yankees got their own network, right? The Yankees get their own network. The Braves were the first ones to do it way back with TBS, and the Cubs were following at WGN. This is when I was a kid. And, at the time it was like, wow, they got their own network. And now, it's grown up to this place where some of these teams do that, but not all. They don't have the pull. It depends on the strength of the franchise. And, it's like, but if you can negotiate a multi-million or billion-dollar contract, now here comes the money. And it comes into the top and then it filters down. From at the college level, you've got some of that effect happening if you've got a great football program, and some of it may drip over into the other programs. But for the most part, I think they probably hog their own money, depending on the university. They're like, hey, football rules the roost here, and basketball's a close second. They're going to get all the money. They're not going to go, hey, let's dump a couple million into the track program and see if we can't raise that level up. You can say, hey, you guys get your minimum budget and do what you can do. Well, with the minimum budget, how are you going to get a jump coach? Just one jump coach, high, long, triple pole vault. We're going to pay one guy, maybe. and you and I both know there are some places where there's a guy wearing that hat who also does shot and disc or does the multis or whatever, because they don't have any money. So if you're a coach and like, hey, they give me a budget of $200,000 and I want to make at least 150, what do I got left? I got $50,000 and I got to get some of these coaches together. And how are you going to get them? What do? They go, hey, who just graduated and is thinking about a career? Coaching. It's like, let's pay them pennies on the dollar and give them a ton of jobs. Right?
It's actually ridiculous. You say that, and it's so true, because especially me being so young into this career, it's like I'm really seeing how underfunded this entire sport is, but more so in the college level. So, for example, like just like you said, you'll have a coach who does long, triple, high, and pole vault, but they also do all the throws as well. And it's to some point, it's like, okay, we understand you have to, obviously allocate your money in certain areas to make it work, and you want to obviously pay yourself a good amount. But it comes down to the point where by doing that, of course, to the coaches that can do it, props. That's amazing. But for the coaches that can't do all those events and train the athletes to the proper, standard that they want them at without killing the athlete from training too much or without being able to kind of spread apart their events. Like I personally experienced that when I was at my first college job, in the sense of I did just triple, long, and high. Now, granted, for some coaches, they're probably like, man, that's not a lot at all. I do 5 more events. And you know what? For them, it's not. But to me, especially someone who came in just coaching high jump, only having a total of, let's say, 10 athletes at a time, if I hosted a clinic, I was thrown into a place where I didn't mind at all. I actually loved it. But I was thrown into a situation where 3 events, 2 of which I've never coached before, also have never really done before, which made it fun because I wanted to learn all about it. And actually, it's funny because I was telling my kids now, I find more enjoyment coaching and learning about triple and long than I do high jump because of just how much I don't know or didn't know about those 2 events. So it's cool to kind of learn something. But also having 25 plus athletes, my challenge instantly clicked where it was like, all right, how are you going to get 25 athletes that sometimes some of them may be doing 2 or 3 events? You only have 5 days of preparation before a meet on the weekend. It's if you're not traveling Thursday or Friday. Right. How do you make sure you get the conditioning in, their strength and their lifting in, their rest periods within that 5-day period? So at some point, I feel like when you have a coach trying to do so many things at once because you're trying to save money or pay yourself a different amount of money, you're kind of hindering the athlete's success. Now, of course, you have those outlier athletes who can handle all those events and still be a stud at it. But those are the outlier athletes. Majority of the athletes at some point are going to find a regression when it comes to doing so many events over a long period of time without having the proper rest, the proper technique, and all the fundamentals put into place because you unfortunately just don't have the time. Like my biggest challenge was trying to get, let's say I had an athlete who did let's say an athlete did long and high jump. And they also, because sometimes I would have athletes that did hurdles also or sprints. And for me, it was a challenge because, well, they're doing 4 events and 2 of which don't at all correlate with jumping in the sense of like what they'd be going over. So, I find myself splitting my days with the other coach to kind of make sure it worked. But at the end, what I found to be the problem was these kids are either coming to us with injuries because of being overworked, or we can't find the proper rest days to put into place, or we feel like we're not training the way we want to because we're kind of cutting corners to make sure we can get everything in with an allocated time that we have. And, it's frustrating because, like you said, if we could get the funding that we needed, let's just say we, got half of what the football team got, which I'm pretty sure most schools don't have. Let's just say Penn State gave us half what the football team gets. Right. Well, I feel as though now they would potentially, this is just hypothetically speaking, but now you potentially have more money to give to other coaches in the sense of, all right, cool, I can bring a coach that can do just the jumps. Then a coach can bring in just do the throws, and then one for distance and sprints. Or, you may have a sprints coach that does, mid distance and short sprints, and then you can kind of go from there. But having a coach that does, 5 or 6 different events, to me, I just feel over time, it just kind of takes away from the program's overall success that they're looking for, unless you just happen to have that amazing coach, what there are out there. But I would truthfully say that's probably a dime a dozen. And I've seen coaches firsthand in meet struggle to try to coach all their athletes without neglecting, one event because there's another one going on. And I was that coach where it was every single track meet, and I can't make this up, but every single track meet, I would finish the meet and I'd be so exhausted that I could just fall asleep anywhere because let's say I had long going on in high jump, and it's not just the men going on, it's men and women, and running back and forth. Like there was points where I'd stop wearing, like I just love dressing up for meets, like wearing nice meet day pants and all that. There was a point where I'm like, all right, you know what? Got to put the shoes on in the shorts because I'm running today. Like I'm going back and forth. So, I think it is ridiculous that this sport is so underfunded. And I think it's really because of just how it's marketed in a sense. Like, and this is just me from looking up a lot of things and kind of my own opinion, but I feel like if we marketed track the way we really should, like we do baseball, basketball, football, we could get the attention, but also the money as well. For the fact that we have these big meets going on, but you can only access them through Peacock, which is a paid subscription, or the USTF site, which you have to pay for that also. Like it should be on, let's say NBC, or it should be on one of those bigger stations that give us the whole 4-hour time frame, let people indulge in it, and not just be something where like, oh my God, track and field's on because it's the Summer Olympics. Like for the fact that most people don't know anything about track and field until Olympics time, it just shows us the lack of awareness people have about our sport. When someone's running an amazing time or jumping this crazy mark, 80% of the spectators are probably just like, oh, all right, that's cool. When the 20% of us like, oh my God, that's amazing. But it's again because we just don't have that exposure. People to say, you know what, this is a sport that I like to watch. Like track and field, if you ask me, is a very intense but also eye-gauging sport. Like everything in that is just amazing. Like from distance to throws to jumps and sprints. Like I was watching a video where it broke down. Let's just use high jump for an example. It broke down in a sense of if you were a regular person that never did track before, to kind of give you a comparison to what these athletes are doing. So I saw one where it was like, I think it was Derek Drew, and they did one where he was doing like a 5 or 6 step jump, and they were just kind of compare it to, well, he's jumping over your house door. That's how high he's going right now, like just from 5 steps, to kind of give you a comparison. So like the average person's like, oh my God, that's high. And stuff like that can help get our, our sport out there. But I really just feel like there's really no actual marketing. And then even when it comes to, trying to help these athletes out, when it comes to professional ones, you're really only getting money if you have these endorsement deals. If you don't have endorsement deals, then you're really lacking on the financial side of things, where you've got professional athletes who are doing 2 or 3 other side jobs, when in reality, they should just be focusing on track and field because we should have the money to provide to them. I think that's crazy. It's just ridiculous, but it's even worse that, and this is something that I realized, I think actually a year ago, and I never really understood when I graduated, is that personally, when I graduated, I felt as though I was just getting into my zone of high jump. Like my first 2 years of college weren't really the best. I was trying to figure some things out. But my last 2 years, like things were clicking. I was a consistent 7.1.5 jumper. I mean, my last season, I think I only had 2 meets where I jumped lower than 7.1.5. So for me, I was like, all right, I'm on the page that I want to be on. But
Yeah.
once I graduated, I truthfully had no clue what was out there for me. Because at that point, I'm like, 7.5 is not qualifying for any Olympics trials. I said, and where do I go to qualify? What meets do I enter? Like, who do I talk to? Like, the information is not really, and this is my opinion, the information is not really out there for someone to just go from college and say, you know what,
Right.
I want to try to take that step. So what do I do?
Yeah. It's it's phenomenally under organized. It's I've spent years doing the football track double. So I played football and also, did the jump in high school. College at UCLA football wasn't happening. I couldn't believe the size of the people in the weight room when I went in there, but I
Right.
was like, okay, I'm not worried about trying to walk on or anything like that. I'll just stick with track. It's a lot easier on your body, and went through that. But when I got to high school, I naturally gravitated right back towards football. I always wanted to coach football. I don't really care about being the head guy. I do like those titles. Either I'm fine with being the secondary guy. I wasn't a problem just being the receivers and secondary guy. And then one time was thrust into the offensive coordinator role and loved it. Just loved it. Had so much fun because now I'm calling the shots, baby. We're running,
Right.
we're running sweep right here, and this is going to score a touchdown, and I know it. And it was like, and then I got thrust into an offensive coordinator job, which I didn't really want. I wanted to be the DC, so I had one chance to be in the DC. So it was like, okay, but football would run all the way through, and then you were done, and you had a nice little recovery time, and then track rolls out, and then track rolls once you're through a track. It's like spring football, and summer football, and it would just repeat. So I was blissfully unaware in high school coaching about Junior Olympics because I checked out. I went into football mode. It was like track was over, and for most of the kids that I had worked with, they went on to their other sports, like we talked about, track's the red-haired stepchild. So everybody goes back to their real job, and like there's nobody left. And the only people that were excited about Junior Olympics, I don't know who they are because I never bumped into them and I didn't know anything about it. I think now I'm like, maybe I would have done that in the summer, because we had time off from football, but I never heard about those meets. And it was like, So, and the weird part is I'm talking about it on all levels. So at the Junior Olympics level, from whatever age group up, I want to use the word, a blank show. it's every summer, like I'll sit there and go, okay, I'm going to find out from my clients. I'm like, I'm going to get off my butt and I'm going to try to work this out. I'm going to figure out where they are, how you get there, this, and that, and the other thing. It's like somebody goes, well, there's two versions. I'm like, what do you mean? They go, you got the USATF and you got an AAU. And I'm like, really? Start looking that up. Dude, no clue. Whoever sets up these websites, they have not one clue how to make it simple. Now, granted, I'm a dinosaur. Okay. I'm super old. I was born in 1964. I'm one of those people that if it doesn't happen within 2 or 3 clicks, I get frustrated. If I can't find it, I'm just done. I'm like, this is stupid. It doesn't work. So I'm sitting there going, all right, we got to get this thing going. And I'm looking it up and getting nowhere. I even called one guy up here in California and he goes, yeah, this is the southern section. The office is down here in San Diego, but the meet is up here in this other city. And so we're not really actually doing that, but this is the office. You called the right place, but I don't really know anything about it. And I'm just like going, are you kidding me? I'm like, this is not a rare occurrence. This happens all the time. And so that's at the Junior Olympics level. But like you're talking about, when I was done at UCLA and I went into training, it's like you become a pariah. You're an outcast. You don't have a place to train. You don't have your coaches with you anymore. You don't have anything. You're on your own and you're looking around. You're just like, where do I train? Where can I go? And I mean, if I'd have been hanging around campus, I'm sure they'd let me train there at UCLA. I went back and I was able to get meets there. If I really needed a meet, I could get there, but I couldn't jump at every single dual meet or something like that and be unattached. Here's former UCLA, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, hi, yeah, thanks. I still haven't figured anything out. So I'm jumping here at home. I mean, it's like, it's really bad. And, and I think it's that quasi land that we're talking about, like in between, because I was pretty good. I jumped 7.3 and I had my moments and everything. And it was nudging into that area of this guy could make it to Olympic trials, blah, blah, blah. But it was like, and it never really happened. I was training myself. I was doing all these different things. You're trying to work and survive and get a job and, pay your rent and everything else, and it's like, and then I put everything in the, I'm waiting basically boat. Like I didn't start teaching the career I've been at for now almost 30 years. I didn't start doing anything. I was waiting tables. I was working at a gym, and I was coaching on a stipend of $2,500, which hasn't changed much. $2,500 at Orange Coast College, which is a small junior college, for 4 months, which at the time seemed like a lot of money because I was a kid coming out of college. I never had any money. I'm like, hey, $2,500, cool. But now you're like, $2,500, you can't buy anything with $2,500. So it's like, and that's what a lot of places are still paying, which is like, you got to be kidding me. It's a nightmare. Oh,
It's actually insane because I'm looking at a lot of these jobs on these websites and whatnot, and I'm obviously aware that because I'm like you, like I don't really want to be a head coach right now, of course, but like even in the future, I like just being assistant coach, like having my own event group, being able to really be invested. I don't really want to worry too much about logistics and all the headaches and everything.
right.
But I'm looking at a lot of
Administrative
these
headaches.
jobs. Exactly. So I'm looking at all these jobs, and this is including head coaching jobs. I'm looking at them, I'm like, is this salary range true? Like, is this really what they're offering?
Yeah.
For a head coach, I'm looking at jobs that are offering 60,000. I'm like, to run an entire team? I'm looking at assistant coaching jobs for less than 30,000. And in some of these places are areas where the cost of living
20, yeah.
Yeah, you have to be making at least 50K to even survive. So I'm looking at these jobs and just like, how do you guys determine first? I mean, I get how they determine it, but like, what is your formula to determine how much I want to pay this coach? But also, do you really think that's attractive? And the sad part is some of these schools, they know that just because of the name and the program that they have, that people will just go and say, you know what, I got to take the job because this could be what gets me to the next step, which is a good thing, but also financially is just so hard to do. But it's also like, there's points where some coaches are just hands tied behind their back. I have to take this job, or am I out of coaching? You know what I'm saying? Right. So like, I find myself a few times I'm looking at these jobs and I'm like, do I apply to this and just understand that I'm going to have no money, or do I say, you know what, we're going to keep waiting? Because like for me, I'm like, listen, at the end of the day, it's funny because when I got into coaching, my original plan was never to really be a coach. Like when I got out of college, I was in a full-time job. I was working at a hospital. I was a food service director there, and I was enjoying myself for a little bit, but then I realized like, this isn't really what I want to be doing. Like, am I going to enjoy my whole life being what I am now? And I'm like, you know what? I want to coach. Like I've been doing coaching for a while with my private business. I was like, I want to see if I could go to the next level. Like I think I can do that. When I went there, I'm like, this is awesome. But then I didn't realize, just again, how I was talking about the money and how low it is for all these jobs. And it's not like it's like, granted, it's not like this job is an easy job. I will never say coach track and field is an easy thing. Right. You're talking maybe 10 plus hours a day, 6-7 days a week. Yep. You're coming home, and you're not just going home and just relaxing. You're probably going home and prepping for the following week, or thinking about what happened that day and figuring out how to get your athletes to the next level. Like I know for me personally, and I'm only 25, I would go home and there wasn't honestly a moment where I wasn't thinking about what I can do better for these athletes, or how I could make tomorrow's practice a little bit more intense to get us to the next level, or how this weekend's going to unfold at the meet. Like my mind's constantly doing that. And like for the compensation for, the workload, the recruitment process that you have to go through with all the visits and all that stuff, and just training and everything is, to me, it's just absurd because
weights and plyos and running workouts and yep.
Yeah, it's like, granted, if you're a coach who doesn't have any real support from an assistant, or, some of these schools have these graduate assistants or these volunteers, which it helps a lot. But if you're someone like myself who didn't have any of that, it's like, oh my God, this is just, is it worth it? And at the end of the day, to me personally, yes, it's worth it to an extent though. Right. It's all about what you're willing to sacrifice is what I'm realizing right now to get to that next level. And, for some, they'll sacrifice everything. And then for others, it's like, you know what, there's a thin line between what I can and can't do. And it's just, it is sad.
Well, I was looking at your bio that you sent me, and you've already filled in a couple blanks that I kind of just started ignoring. I went, when I started coaching, I did, 6 years right away. Was it 6? Wow. I did 6 years right away at the junior college level. Then I started coaching at the high school that I eventually got hired at. And I spent like another 15 years or 12 to 15 years at Garden Grove High School, and had successes here and there, league champs and school records. And, people go to our state meet, CIF state, blah, blah, blah. So different years, different successes, and, went through all that. But I never, at that point, I had become a teacher, and it wasn't that I didn't enjoy coaching, but I wasn't seeing coaching as a career, and I didn't see anything tied with it, which is kind of interesting. I've told this story before, how I got started doing this business, but it doesn't really bear repeating now. But it was like, when I started doing the private training, it was almost by accident. And then I started getting decent money at it, going, well, this could actually turn into a nice little side business. I started it because I hated teaching summer school. So I thought, well, if I can do this job all year round even, and it makes up for the money that I really needed doing summer school, then I don't have to do summer school, and I can do something I enjoy and make the same amount of money, even if it takes the rest of the year to do it. And since then, it's kind of evolved, into all these other avenues, video analysis, this, and a podcast here, and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, I'm looking on yours and it says certifications, right? I can't even read all those letters. USTF, CCCA, technical coaching, and Altus coaching, the high jump specialist, Altus coaching the vertical jumps. So I just went through the level 1 USATF thing, certification. And that was for an athlete that I was training for a while, who's a Paralympic athlete, and they were going to give me some kind of a stipend. And you got $100 if you just didn't do anything. And if you upped your level, they would give you a little more. And it turned out that all those jumping hoops were nothing, because the athlete and I didn't stay together that long. But, I figured, well, I paid for it, I'll go ahead and do it. And there was quite a few interesting things. The guys teaching the courses, pretty good coaches, interesting, a lot of experience, a lot of high level athletes. I'm listening to them and going, yeah, that's valuable information. And then there's a level 2 and all these things. And I'm just like going, at the same time, like the other part of me is like, why do I need that after my name, to be a coach? So you're always playing that game of, do I really need that? Is it a high enough certification? Is that a little button I can put over there where everybody goes, ooh, that's that certification, he must really know his stuff? Or am I going to be measured by my athletes, and their success and, whatever? And it's like, it's such a weird road, but here we are. We have to reinvent ourselves and self-promote, right? Nobody's out there telling everybody about you, because the athletes that are good, they don't usually sit there and go, hey, first thing, I want to give props to my coach. They're like, they may, and if they're classy, they will. But if at the same time, they're going to start to revel in that glory as they start climbing up the ladder, right? So interesting. But I'm not saying we're digressing, but I'm like, man, I've been going down this road a lot lately. I guess I'm getting frustrated. So let's talk a little bit of technique, if you don't mind. So what? This is just something that's coming into my head now, because I'm starting to write programs in this business, for athletes, and 12-week programs, blah, blah, blah. And I just mentioned Tony Holler last week, but when you're coaching, Devin, what do you think is the most important thing that you have to train your athletes to do? Like, just mentioning as a quick aside, you mentioned your first 2 years at Penn State were a struggle. My first year at UCLA was a nightmare, where I went from, I was a 210 high jumper in high school, went to the state meet, ran into a lot of good jumpers at California state meet, who I could tell you'd just be like, oh man, these are like names of like who's who of really high jumpers in state history. But they happened to be there my senior year, and I jumped against them for more years after that, and then always had to struggle because they were really good. But it was like, the 210 was fine. I went to college thinking, oh man, I'm going to jump 7 feet. I'm going to do this and that. And that first year I went from 6'3", 180 pounds, which is, for some high jumpers, is considered heavy. And I had 2 guys at UCLA, Del Davis, who was a 7'7" jumper, who had just jumped 7'7" and a quarter at 7'7" or 7'7" and a quarter at, it was at altitude in Utah. Where was it? Salt Lake or whatever. But he jumped 7'7" and came in second to a guy named Audie, and his sister was a great sprinter. They're both from Jamaica, but he was up in Canada. Long story. And anyway, he jumped 7'7", and then Lee Balkin, who still holds this California state record the meet record at 7'3". So they had two guys, and when I got there, I was number 7 on the depth chart, right, at 6'10". So I'm sitting there going, okay, cool, I'm number 7. And when I asked the jumps coach what it took to get a scholarship, he laughed at me. he goes, oh yeah, well, you jump 7'2" and we'll talk, right? So I'm like, okay, well, I jumped 6'10", so I guess that's a couple jumps up the road, and started training that freshman year. 6'3", 180. Dell and Lee both told me I was too heavy and too slow. So I put on 15 pounds. I put on 15 pounds. I didn't get any stronger, but I just kind of matured right into that heavier body, and I was lifting and everything, but I don't know if I was lifting enough, and maybe 250 squats or so, I don't know. And I jumped like crap that year. I mean, I went from 6'10" 3/4 to 6'8" 3/4 once, and famously hit my head on the standard at the first meet, which had never happened to me before. I was so excited. I jumped over the standard on the first jump and didn't realize that I was too close and a little behind. Second jump, bam, just nailed the standard with my head, blood laying there, like, oh my God.
Bleeding.
It was amazing, right? So, but it was a terrible year. And so I'm coming from that same mindset. We're saying, hey, what is it? How do I get rolling? You work in, it's like looking at all those experiences, your growth as a jumper, you're, taking all that. What is it that you feel like you have to get your athletes to do to be successful, knowing that you had to learn how to be successful after a couple of years of struggle?
Well, honestly, this is going to be like a bizarre answer because I'm sure some people will be like, well, it's the approach or it's the way they jump. And mine's very simple, and it goes for literally any event and any athlete. And it's something that's personally from me that I experienced, which helped me like tremendously. It is just, I focus on strictly building confidence in my athletes, building confidence and trusting the process and understanding that they're going to struggle before they get great. In the sense of when I came in, I was just like you. I was a 6'10" jumper out of high school. And, I was one of 2 recruits that got accepted to Penn State for a high jump. And, coming out of high school, I'm like, I'm going 7 feet, going to go 7'1" junior year. I mean, sophomore year, I'll be jumping 7'4" by the time I'm a senior. To me, I was like, it just has to happen. Freshman year, I came in and I realized the change that you have to go through. Like, it ain't no 6 foot opening bar now. It's 6'6" and higher. And I'm like, whoa, that's a little different. The training's a lot different. And, I came in, I'm 6'1" as of now, and I haven't grown much. So when I'm in college, I was 6 feet, maybe 6'1", but I was actually like 185, 186. So I was without a doubt in my terms, small but heavy jumper. But for me, some people say it's not a thing, but I still think it is a speed versus power jumper. Mm-hmm. I was 100% a power jumper. I wasn't fast. I was able to build speed throughout my approach, but I had to rely a lot on power. And for my first 2 years, I had phenomenal teammates. Like these athletes were telling me nonstop, like, listen, man, your time's coming. Like, you're going to be great. But for me, it was just no confidence. It was just, why am I being bad? Like, why do I suck? Like, what am I doing? Is it because I'm not eating right? Am I lifting heavy enough? Am I not sleeping? Like what's going on? And, personally, I just kept saying, well, it's not my confidence. It's nothing in my head. And I always realized that high jump is more mental than it is physical. And I use that quote all the time to my athletes, especially when they get kind of frustrated. I'm like, listen, this is a more mental game than it is physical. And for me, it was never that, I wasn't able to do those higher bars. It wasn't that I wasn't lifting heavy enough. It wasn't that I wasn't working hard enough, because I was a person where I would never cheat a rep. And if I did cheat a rep, then I would feel it the next day because I'd kind of be down on myself. So there was a point in my junior year, and I can't make this up because I tell the story a lot because it's what made me change my entire outlook on everything that I did as an athlete. So at Penn State, in a lot of high-level colleges, they have what they call a travel roster. And essentially, you have to make that roster to go to these bigger meets. And fortunately for me, I was one of 2 high jumpers. And the one thing about it, which really I think could have played a part into my confidence killer, was that I came in with a jumper who had tremendous success his first 2 years. I mean, he came out of high school jumping 6'10" like me. I think it was maybe 6'11", but it was 6'10", I'm pretty sure. And I'm talking first meet, 7 1/4. Second meet, 7'1", I think it was. Like, this kid was just phenomenal. But what was difficult for me to be around was that this was an athlete who, when I say didn't really try at all, but just had complete talent, that's what I'm talking about. Like, there's someone who, as a teammate, I'd be like, yo, listen, stop cutting corners, X, Y, and Z. Like, it's going to come back and bite you in the ass. But in reality, it never did catch up with him. He just happened to be really good. So with me being around that, instead of looking at it and being like, you know what, let me work harder and try to be, on his level and try to match that, it was like, what am I doing? Like, why is he being so good? And like, what is it that I have to do to be at that level? Like, how come he gets to do half the work, but, reap the benefits? And here I am doing 100% work, but finding myself coming up short. Like my freshman year, I think the best I did was 6'9" and 3/4. And that was towards the end. And it was to the point where when I made that bar, I was like, oh yes, like things are finally clicking, like I'm figuring stuff out. And then after that, it was kind of went back downhill. Now, my junior year, it was our indoor season, close to the end, I think maybe 3 or 4 weeks before our Big Ten championships. And I got lucky to travel because thankfully I traveled every single meet. So I was blessed for that. And I thank my coach for that. But I was lucky to make this meet at Clemson University. And during the warm-up period, I was flying over bars, 5'7", 6'7", 6'8", and I'm just like, oh, I feel amazing. And when it came to the meet, my nerves just took over me. And that was something that I had to try to figure out my first 2 years was how do I control my nerves? Never figured it out. My junior year when I'm at this meet, nerves are so bad. I think I cleared the open height, which was 6'6", and after that, I was out at the 6'8" bar. And the one thing that stuck with me that my coach told me, and it was something that took me a minute to process, but I understood what he was saying with the message behind it, was he sat me down and, obviously like, yelled us a little bit because he's just disappointed, which as you should be. Like I came in, I underperformed, I'm mad as well. And he said to me, and his exact words were, I had to fight to get you to come here. And for me, being an immature young athlete at that moment, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, what? Like, what does that mean? Like, that's rude to say. But when I really focused and understood what he was saying, it was, listen, I have a lot of faith in you. I obviously fought to get you here, but you came up short. And that's something that we can't do as an elite athlete at Division I program in the Big Ten. Like we expect more out of you. And I think it was no more than 3 days of me dwelling and thinking about what he was saying and what that meant, that I cannot make this up. It was Jim Thorpe meet. It was one of our like last chance meets before our big conference meet. I was literally in a mindset where it was like, well, you know what? He's right. Like this man did fight for me to get here, and I came up really short. And like I haven't been having a good 2 years. I'm on scholarship, and what have I been doing? Like, why am I here? Like, why did I start doing this if I'm going to end up just, underperforming? And it was at Jim Thorpe meet where I came in and I said, you know what? No pressure. Just go out there, have fun. Every jump you take is going to be bar by bar. And you have to understand that if you do bad, you do bad. But the one thing I can always come out on top of is that I learned something from it, no matter the outcome. And that meet right there, I jumped 6'10". I PR'd again at 6'11", or it was 6'10 and a half. I'm not 100% sure on that one. But these were two jumps that instantly I was like, all right, I got this. Like this could be me. Yeah. Big Tens comes. I think I took 5th place that year for the first time ever. Like I was never medaling. I was never even coming close to scoring. I was someone who came into college and should have been scoring, but never did. So I was always underperforming. First junior year meet, I think I got 5th. Outdoors comes. Things starting to progress. Now I'm hitting those 6'11" bars, just missing the 7 foot. And it was our senior day, my senior year indoor. And this was my breakout meet. This is when things were just ready to go. Like I knew for a fact, like, all right, my time has come. And this was because, I felt 100% body-wise, like my strength was there. My mental state was a little bit better. I talked to a psychiatrist to kind of figure some things out, our team psychiatrist for sports, and he gave me good techniques. It was something as simple as just breathing. Focus on your breathing, not to jump. After that, just let everything do what it has to do. And it was our senior day. Couldn't have been any better. I went out there and I cleared 7'1.5", and 3 attempts at 7'2.5". When I say I clipped it with my heel on each attempt. And I'm talking probably a good 3 inches or 4 inches of hip height to spare. Wow. And that was when I was like, you know what? My time is now. Like this is where I start doing. So it was the confidence that I built in myself through words from my coach that any athlete would have took negatively, but instead I took that as motivation. And when I say this, and if he's listening to this eventually in the future, he's going to laugh at this. There was every single meet, instead of my coach encouraging me, I told him specifically, talk bad. Tell me I'm going to miss the bar. Like talk crap to me. And instead of coming over and be like, hey man, great jump, like it's awesome, he would literally say to me, That's all you have? Like, really? You can go higher than that. And for me, I'm like, all right, perfect. I need that. Like, that was what motivated me. So
Right.
even to this day, when I jump, I don't look for people to give me motivation. I look for you guys. I mean, I look for people to kind of like tell me what I can't do because now I want to prove you wrong. And that's what helped build me confidence. Wasn't about proving myself right. It was more so about, okay, let me show the naysayers what I can actually do. And that was something that I found to be my niche to help me. Now, granted, most people are gonna listen to this and be like, what is it talking about? You want people to downplay you? For me,
Yeah.
it was just what's going to help me build that confidence. And that's what it was. And my coach was awesome with one, being comfortable with doing that, but also realizing the benefit it had from, doing all of what he did for me. And that alone is what built that confidence. So even when I started my private business, when I started coaching in high school, and even now when I was at the college level, every single athlete I told, it was the very first thing was, listen, I don't really care how good of a jumper you are. I don't care how bad of a jumper you are. I said, all I ask for you to do is give me your best effort and help me help you build confidence in yourself. I said, confidence alone can take you from bottom to top. And that's just a fact because of how mental the sport is. If you don't believe that you can do something, how are you ever going to achieve it? So for me,
Right.
the most important thing is confidence. And that's not just something that I just picked up from or whatever. Like, that's a personal experience that I went through that helped me thrive. And through that, truthfully speaking, a lot of my athletes from the college level and even my personal clients, they have found a lot of success just alone from being confident in their jumps. Like, there's times where, better than me when you have that block period of jumping where you really can't make any bars. You're like, yo, what is going on? And when
Right.
that happens to my athlete, I just say, listen, just jump. Like, if you miss it, I really could care less. I just want you to be confident in your steps and your takeoff and how you clear that bar. You tell me you're confident regardless of the result, then we've achieved what we need to achieve. I said,
Yeah.
you just happen to have those days. It's those days of thirds. You got to have a good day. You got to have a bad day. You got to have an okay day. And that's
Yeah.
what it is. But confidence, without a doubt, is the number one most important thing, in my opinion, to help any athlete achieve that next level.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. One of the things I'll do, and I try to do this in a way where it's like I'm sharing with them a little wink. I'll go, if a kid tells me, I usually, one of the first things I ask a new client, and this happens frequently enough where I'll say, well, hey, this is our first time working together. What are you looking to do? What are you looking to next season? What are your goals? And I've had some people say, and the USATF class was like, oh, you should have them write it all down. And I'm like, okay, but I want to know now. Like I want to get that off the cuff. Like, have they thought about it even yet? Like, what are we doing here? Are the parents the drivers? Lots of times the parents are pushing the kids. They're just going along, doing what they're doing. But you find those kids. I've had a couple now. I got one this year who's a junior. This is going into his senior year, and he did not have a good end of the year. He was jumping 6'5", and then the big meets came, and he jumped 6'2" to get through one qualifying round, and then he just bottomed out. Didn't make it to the next step. So he's out of the state mill, didn't do anything. And I had seen him at a meet earlier this year, and I was like, this kid should be jumping at least 6'5" or 6'6", and like that. So anyway, ask him the question, what are your goals? And then somewhere, I'll usually wait, but somewhere in the first jump workout or somewhere in that first week, and you're having a chance to move the bar up on a certain drill. And I'll say, well, later on in the season, when you're jumping it, and I know their personal best because I've already done my research, and they tell me, they jump 6'5". I said, so, we come around later in the season when you're taking your first jump at 6'8", and they just, I can see, I wait for the look because I'm doing it on purpose. I want to see that look because I'm basically speaking into existence the facts that they've already PR'd, and they're moving on to something that they may not have even thought that they can get to. And I'm saying, you're gonna, when you hit this level, later on, it's gonna be, a pretty cool thing. I stole that from, in a way, if you've ever seen the movie Hoosiers, but Gene Hackman does it with the kid that's hit the 2 free throws at the end. He's a bench player. He gets fouled. He's got to make both shots, right? I think he has to make the first one to tie, the second one to win. So they're all sitting around, and he goes, all right, guys, so we're going to do this and this. And he goes, after Ollie makes his second free throw, we're going to play zone going back. So he just basically said, you're making both free throws. He didn't say you have to make both free throws now. You understand the game's really important. We're in the state finals here. You know, if you miss this first one, we're screwed. The best we can do is tie or what, you know. He didn't say any of that. He just goes, after all, he makes his second free throw, you guys got to make sure you get back and don't give up a buzzer beater, you know, because he's a good coach and he's saying that could happen, which as they showed it, the guy actually throws one up and bounces off the rim at the end, you know, and you're like, you still almost lose the game after all that other stuff. But yeah, I like giving them those little things, you know, to let them know that you think, you know, that they can jump really high. And I went after this kid. I mean, I really wanted this kid. I approached him on Instagram. I approached him at the meet. I sent him a thing at Instagram. I think I sent him one of his jumps that I filmed because I was actually running the meet, and I just had my iPad with me and film everybody. It's real easy to recruit kids. You go, hey, you want to see your jump? And they're like, oh yeah, nobody ever shows me my jump. You're like, hey, look at this. You're too close. You know, start coaching them, right? I just start coaching them, you know, and just go, we can fix that, you know, and you're going to jump a lot higher. So I thought that's interesting. You went to the sports psychology realm, which we don't get as much of here on Raise the Bar as I would like. So props, right. Dev. I like that. Any other tricks you have along those lines besides, you know, like
I think that's a big part. And like you touched on a little bit about, you didn't say it, but essentially you're saying like you'd like to build self-confidence in that athlete in the sense of like, all right, I know you can do this. It's just when you achieve it, you'll know as well. So like for me, something that I think I'm good at is identifying an athlete's talent and ability to be better in a sense. Just based off like small things. Like if you're a high jumper and I see you running to the bar and like you're just stutter stepping and whatnot, but you're jumping 6'4", I'm like, listen, I can see you jumping 6'8". And that could be like the bar that you're just like, easy jump. And, you know, the one thing that I learned through not only coaching privately, but also at the college level and also personally is that an athlete responds 10 times better when the coach shows the belief in them. And that goes for practice, that goes for meets. And I actually think it's more in the meets than it is in practice, because when you're a coach and, you know, obviously you put so much into it and you're going to eventually get a little disappointed or mad at an athlete when you do something wrong. And your first initial reaction is probably to say, what's going on? Like, why are you doing this? And be a little upset, but not realizing that you're not the one jumping first off. And the mental effect they can have on an athlete from you being so negative after they already know you had a bad jump. Right. And something that, you know, I really took and ran with. And I also saw this was back probably during the basketball season of the NBA. I'm not sure what coach it was, if it's an NBA coach or a college coach, but they were saying how this coach specifically smiles after every conversation he has with his athletes. And I looked at that and I'm like, I know why, because he wants them to see that he has faith in them, but also the last thing that they see from their coach isn't a mad face, it's a smile on the face. So you walk on that court and you're like, you know what? I'm cool, I'm confident, I'm collected. And for me, and any of my athletes will obviously attest to this, and they'll say, yes, this is true, is that I don't care how bad of a jump it is. I'm always going to give you feedback in a positive way, because I know that's going to hit you harder than it is if I was to say, why are you doing this? Why do you suck X, Y, and Z? Right. And I've seen through my athletes' progressions that has actually helped them. And even in meets where, let's just say your first jump is bad, we already know an athlete's probably gonna be in their head and just kind of chalk the entire rest of the jumps because they're so fixated on that first jump. Well, any other coach is probably gonna say, you know, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. Me, I'm like, listen, first jump, that's why you get two, it's no big deal. What did you feel? My biggest question to all my athletes, I don't care what level of athlete you are, is what do you feel? Because I see a lot of things, but I'm not in your body. Right. So unless I can understand what you're feeling, I don't really want to give you as much feedback, because for all I know, from what I'm seeing you running slow could be, well, maybe you fell out the back, like your first or second stride was a little bit too short, so you had to make up for it, and then bam, you really felt a little off in your approach. From the naked eye, it's like, why are you running slow? So I always ask, how are you feeling? And based on their response, I'm able to give the criticism or the feedback that I need to give them that's going to help them get to the next step. Now, regardless of the outcome, you're always going to have a positive response from myself. And, you know, there's only been one or two occasions where instead of me giving them full on positive comments, I had to add a few eye opener ones in there to give them the understanding that, listen, like, what you're doing is not okay. I understand we need to be better, but you as yourself have to want to be better as well. And I can't always, hold your hand and, give
Right.
you the good if you not want to, try to make that change. So it guess it ties in that every athlete can never be coached the same,
Right.
because you have to understand which athletes adapt to certain things. But I know personally from experience that 99% of the athletes always respond to positive feedback before they do to negative feedback. And
Yeah.
that's something more now than what it was back in the day,
Yeah.
especially since that mental health is such a big thing, because you got to also realize these are young adults. I mean, I'm young adult myself, but they're going through a lot, like college, social living. You're on your own
Hmm.
for the first time. You're structured. You're doing a lot of things. So for all we know, this week could have been a week of hell for that athlete because of whatever was going on in their life. So maybe it's affecting, and it's a true thing. It does affect your overall performance based on how you are, mentally and physically up to it. So maybe they just had the worst week of their life, and the last thing they need is for me to be yelling at them about about a slow jump because
Right.
something bigger is going on.
Yeah.
So, being able to speak to your athletes on a level to where they feel comfortable to speak to you is big to me, but also showing that positive reinforcement can take you so many steps further than you could imagine. And I really think that's something that old school coaches don't understand, because there's such, old school coaches where it's like, just do the task, just get
Yeah.
it done. Like personally for me, when I grew up, I was an athlete, football, baseball, basketball, soccer, track. It didn't matter. I was used and trained to be yelled at and to respond in a way where it's, all right, cool, let me fix it. Like I wasn't someone who took it negatively and took it
Negative.
to heart.
Yeah.
It was just,
You didn't think they were
yeah,
mad
this
at
is
you.
just
You were just
coaching.
like, yeah.
Yeah, like they yell at you, and that's what it is. But I realize that nowadays athletes obviously are different, and you have to coach them differently. So this procedure, in my eyes, helps a long way, and this goes for any level, any gender, any skill
Yeah.
level at all. Like it can help in so many ways, and I mean, I think you get more out of it this way than you would with negative reinforcement, because like I said before, your athlete is now open to talking to you. And this is where I'm talking about in the sense of
Yeah.
there were times where I was coaching and it'd be 10
Partnership.
at night. 10 at night. I have kids texting me, hey coach, listen, what do you think about my jump from last week or whatever? When in reality, some kids are terrified to text their coach and say, hey, what is your feedback? And they wait
Right.
for practice. I love when my kids are watching film, which most track and field athletes I doubt do, because they're like, well, that's a football thing. But no, it is a
Yeah.
track and field thing. You should be watching your film every single day.
Yeah.
But a lot of athletes won't, because they don't feel comfortable enough to go ask their coaches questions, because they're afraid they're going to, ask a question when the coach thinks that they're either undermining them or they know more than the coach does. When in reality,
Right.
it's just, hey, listen, I'm curious. I want to ask this question. So for me, I'm the type of coach where whatever question you have, ask me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just that simple. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
just
I
that
like
simple.
that. The feedback is a huge element. Like I tell my kids all the time, and this could be again youth. I've started these last couple of years. I think I've covered the gamut now. So I've had, all of a sudden it's youth, junior Olympics, then it's, all the way up to high school, junior college, elite, and Paralympic. I'm like, okay, so pretty much everybody. But what I tell them when we're doing technique work, I go, I honestly, I could care less about the bar. The only reason I'm giving you a bar is so that you have a reference point. And I keep stressing this like to the utmost. I'm like, and the bar is a terrible reference for takeoff. I'm like, I want you looking at the bar standard or somewhere off in the crowd, something straight up and down a corner of a building, because I don't want you looking at the bar, because I think as soon as your head goes across, you go across. And now, we're started our layout before you're off the ground. And I'm like preaching sequences and everything else. I'm like, we want to deal with this bar. It's on layouts. But I'm like, when we're in practice, I go, how many times have you heard me go to you guys? You missed again? Like, it doesn't matter. I'm like, what did your knee drive do? Did you drive it across like we're working on? Did you get your hands up? Did you drive your hands up really high? Did you pop them down to your hips? I mean, what were we talking about right before you went? That's the feedback I'm going to give them. I said, hey, we've been talking about this knee drive all day. We just did 5 drills. We come over from those drills. I expect it to come right over here and you're going to drive that knee, like crazy and leave it up there, So that's the feedback that I'm going to give them. It doesn't, I don't really preach bar until you start getting into the season. I figure early season is still a lot like practice, so you're going through stuff. I say, hey, open as low as they'll let you. I don't care. Take a bunch of jumps. Let's see some patterns. Let's see how things work. As the bar goes up, I expect you're going to get more aggressive and we're going to get a little bit farther back. And, let's do what we do. But, then you can start preaching. The thing that I like you're saying about the feedback is I'll tell them, I go, there's times when they come up and they run through and they don't jump. They come up and they stutter their feet and they don't jump again. And then the pressure's on, they got 20 seconds left and they go up and they take a jump and it's a bad jump. And I'll just say, well, we didn't really learn a whole lot there. So, I'm like, I don't know what to tell you because your approach was off. You got in your head, you changed everything. I'm like, okay, because as soon as you go stutter, and then jump, I don't know what we're doing. Now they shouldn't have that happen, but if they do, I don't know how to adjust them. So then I'm like, well, you're just going to have to try this, go faster at the beginning or, whatever it is that I came up with that I saw. When they finally get a good jump, if they take a decent attempt, I'm like, that would have been nice if that would have been our first one. Because I go, usually you've had this experience, right? I go, look, you do something wrong on the first one and I fix that. You fix it. And then you take a second jump, which is better, but you miss again. And you're like, okay, now you fix the takeoff, you rode the knee better. Now let's do this. And then, sometimes you can string that together and you go miss, mate. And I'm like, congratulations, you bought yourself 3 more jumps. And that's all what I tell them. I go, you got 3 more jumps and let's find something that we got to work on, but when you waste a jump, that's the part I don't get frustrated about. I'm like, you basically cost yourself. It was like a wasted rep. We didn't learn anything.
You can't even coach it.
Yeah.
To look at.
Yeah, I can't help you. If you jump up and grab the bar and throw it under you and you were too close to anything, I'm like, well, you were too close, but we didn't learn anything, especially my own belief is that your brain has a jump record of literally every jump you've ever taken, and especially a kinesthetic awareness of flight time in relation to the bar. Like one meet when I was at UCLA, we went against Arizona, and Arizona had a kid named Maurice Crumby, who was 3-time state champ in California, jumped 7.5 at one time. And you want to talk about a power jumper, he would just run really fast, both arms back, bang that knee drive like crazy, and then fling his head back as hard as he could. But he could jump. I mean, it wasn't like it was all layout. It was mostly just radical knee drive and arm drive. It was 7.5 in high school, right? So he goes to Arizona, and I'm in California, UCLA, and he was, I want to say he might have been a year younger. I might have had a year on him. So anyway, we go against Arizona. I never beat Crumby. Never. Not even close. So we go to this meet, but it's my second year. It's my sophomore year. And this is my good year. My freshman year was crap. My sophomore year, I jumped, 218. I got up to 7.2. So I was like, and I think I just jumped 7 feet a couple weeks before. And I hadn't jumped 7.2 yet, but it was going to happen that year. But anyway, we're going up, and the ref, those little guys in the red hats, right? Oh my gosh, these guys were ancient. I mean, these guys, when you're a 20-year-old, they look like they were 100, but I mean, they couldn't have been any younger than 70s. And this one guy, Dave, comes up, and I remember we went 2:0, everything was 5s, right? So it was 2 meters, 205, 210, 215, right? So we go 2 meters was 6 3/4. I think I was pretty comfortable to open at that. 205 was 8 3/4. 210 was 10 3/4. So we went boom, 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 boom. And I was over 10 3/4 for like the 3rd or 4th week in a row. And this is already a way better year than I had the year before. And I'm like, yeah, we're going to 7 feet now. And we go up to 7 feet, and all of a sudden everybody's missing. And everybody was pretty, you've been at those meets, like there's meets when one guy's on and there's meets when everybody's on. This meet, everybody was on. Like nobody was really missing. The bar went up pretty quick. Boom, 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 boom. 3 jumps. We're jumping to 7 feet. Go. And so, like I'm saying, your rhythms, right? It's just 205 from 6 feet to 6 3/4, 6 8 3/4, 6 10 3/4. You go, okay, it's 5 centimeters every time, but there's an interior timing on that. Like how long you're going to ride your knee. You know visually kind of where you are spatially. You know when you throw your head back, you know how long you got to hold that because you've taken those jumps before. You know, I tell people there's a learning curve. You know, the first time over a height, very rarely do you just go right over the next height when you PR. Double PRs get rare, right? As you get older, it's like it's just harder. But it's like it's because it's so much higher now. But anyway, 3 jumps in a row, bam, 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 at 7 feet.
Right.
In the first one, I hit my head on the bar when I laid out. And that never, ever, ever, ever happens to me. I was a power jumper like you. I would drive my knee up and just wait until I got to where I needed to get. And then I would go for it. And it was like I hit my head on the bar. I'm like, okay. And this is before I got taught that I needed to be farther out as the bar went up. And I realized this now. So I took 2 more jumps and I'm like, and I'm just fighting. You know, it's like, it seems like I'm right on top of the bar and it seemed higher and blah, blah, blah. So we get done. And who makes it? The only guy that makes the height is Crumby, because Crumby's jumped 5. And even though everybody was struggling and he struggled, he missed twice and then he made it. And we get done and they go, yeah, the refs come over and they go, well, we were supposed to put the bar up to 7.2 next, but we discovered that we'd already put it at 7.2. They skipped the height. So,
wow.
And can the bar come back down? No, the bar's already gone up, right? The rule was, sorry, it was like, sorry, we put it at 7.2. Thanks. You know, that was great. So it was like, but that was my famous story for how powerful your brain is and how it remembers so many things. And like right away, there were these little warning signs going, there's something wrong with this.
Right.
It wasn't necessarily the jump and the height. It was like, this isn't matching up with what we know about 7 feet. And now I had a limited repertoire of 7-foot jumps, but I did have them, you know, at that point. And it was like, this isn't matching up. So I just find it amazing, the stuff that's locked in here. And, you know, like you're saying, how do you unlock it? How do you get them to believe in it? And I agree, I always tell people, other than field goal kickers and maybe golfers, I go, our brains are like the worst. Like I've told people, I go, I've had those meets where I knew I couldn't miss. And I've had those meets where I knew I couldn't make a thing, you know, and it could have been 2 weeks apart where you did one and then the other, you know. It's like, what happened, man? Last week I was on top of the world. This week I'm sitting there going, oh my God, I don't think I can do any of this right, you know. And the mental side is just amazing.
It's out of there.
Yeah.
It's insane. It's fun. You said that, like, I always think that what makes a high jumper a great high jumper, not even an elite high jumper, just a great high jumper, is the body awareness. And that's not just over the bar, it's everything. Like,
yeah.
And it comes down, I think, to, are you going through the reps or are you actually doing the reps? And by that, I always tell my athletes, like, if I tell you to do circle runs, I don't want you to just do circle runs.
Right.
I want you to do them and actually understand why, what it's helping you do, how it's going to translate to your jumps. Like you were saying with the knee drive situation, like if we're doing drills over here, when it comes to the pit, I expect to see the knee drive going. So when I see stuff like that for my athletes, like where we'll spend like, a whole 20 minutes on just working on 2 things. Let's just say it's, knee drive and, knowing when to kick. And I personally, I don't really ever teach much on bar mechanics because I prefer believer that what you do on the ground happens over the bar. You can't change it.
Right.
But like there's times where, I'll teach a kid how to back bend, or I'll teach them, when to kick, or, what to focus on over the bar, but I rarely do that. But, I think over time, from just actually paying attention to the reps and understanding why you do them, that's what builds that body awareness to know, if my step is off, if my takeoff feels weird, if I'm not setting up correctly, like when I should throw my head back. Like personally for me, and this is funny because I've been told all my life of high jump that I have phenomenal bend. And that's never something I ever trained. I was never taught it at all. It was just something I had. And a lot of athletes either have it or they don't have it. Yeah. And if I have an athlete that doesn't have it, I'm never going to spend a whole session or a lot of time trying to get them to have a bend, because I've seen jumpers like Javon Harris who truthfully has no bend. They just have the ability to wait. And when you're ready for it, just snap back, kick over, you're done. So, it's literally just accumulation of, is this athlete paying attention to these drills and trying to apply them? So for me, and I'm different as a high jumper because I don't train my jumpers to to essentially do what it is that I did, in the sense of I was a jumper where in practice, I wanted a bar. I hated a bungee. I never wanted a bungee because I wanted to know,
Yeah, bungee suck. I agree.
yeah, it doesn't really do much except for keep that fear out of an athlete's, head.
Right.
So for me, I was always someone where I don't care what the practice was. I'm obviously going to focus on the drill at hand and try to execute certain things, but I want to go high.
Yeah.
Like I want to get up there. So my senior year alone, I never took a practice where I wasn't attempting 6'10" or higher. Like that
Wow.
was a given for me. Like, it was always I'd come in and I would never.
Yeah.
What did you say?
It's a lot of wear and tear
A lot
on your body. Full approach.
right.
Yeah.
But the thing was nice was that, I was able to, my coach was never about quantity. It's always about quality. So he'd rather us take 10 total jumps the whole day and make them quality jumps rather than 25. And we're just like, all right, why are 18 of them, crappy ones? And that was my, something that I liked a lot. So, shockingly, I never really had any injuries. And you think like this kid has to because of what he's doing. But there was never a practice where I would jump anything less than 6'6", and I'm talking 3 steps, 5 steps, whatever. I had to go to what open height would be or higher because I wanted to train my body to understand what those bars are and what to expect when they come to me. So even on ramp jump days, when we're doing like 5 steps off the ramp, I want the bar at 7'7", 7'8". Now, granted, I'm never getting there at that time, but I want to know what it's like to jump that higher bar so that when I get to those attempts, I'm not that person that's like, oh my God, what do I do? Because as well, you can always tell when an athlete literally has no clue what to do at that next height that they just cleared before. Let's say a kid's 6'10" jumper never has touched 7 feet. That 7-foot bar comes, you can instantly tell all the mechanics that they were doing before that 7-foot bar had just gone out the window because now they're too focused on just trying to jump over the bar. Right. When I was telling my kids, listen, you focus on these drills and you focus on the technique at hand, you never have to worry about doing too much. Just trust the technique, be aggressive, and be patient. And that's really it. Yeah. Like for me, someone asked me one time about my form over the bar because I tend to I'll drop my lead arm up and then I'll subconsciously smack my hip with my right arm. And that's essentially when I tell myself, all right, let's kick over the bar now. And someone said to me, they go, how'd you time it up? Like, how'd you know when to do that? I go, truthfully speaking, I've never noticed it until you just pointed it out now. And I said, that's something that just honestly happened through repetition, right. Like to the point where I don't notice it, my body just does it. And I watch a lot of my videos like, wow, it is right there. I slap my hip and that's when my butt is over the bar. The bar is probably between the back of my knee and my calf and I kick right over it. It's kind of the same, but it's just back to the repetition and your ability to actually focus on the task at hand. And, I think it's something that a lot of athletes and coaches sometimes overlook is that, are you focused on this athlete trying to actually understand this drill, or are you just trying to push the drill in to get through the next thing and just hope that they jump high? Like, personally, for me, when it comes to my clients, like I said, I love the bar up, but there's times where I'll just have the bungee out there because I know if that bar is up, they're going to be focused on trying to make it. Like I had an athlete at college, at Ryder, actually, one of my favorite jumpers. Her name is Savannah, and she is a phenomenal jumper. She's jumped 5'7" consistently. She's had some really good attempts at 5'8.5", 5'9". But the one thing about her at practice, which truthfully drove me crazy, but it's what made me a better coach, is that she was always fixated on making the bar if there was a bar up there. The minute the bar drops, what hit it? It was never like, all right, coach, I felt slow, like X, Y, and Z. I would always tell her, listen, Tav, I could care less if that bar falls. I said, I don't care if it's at 5'4", I don't care if it's at 4'2". You can miss that bar all day. I just want you to tell me and understand what it is that you're feeling and how you're feeling on that approach and that takeoff. Like everything else over that bar, I don't care. You already have great form. You know how to get over those higher bars. It's just working on the ground mechanics. But there came a point where I don't use the bar anymore because I get tired of having to put it back up and it's by myself. So I'm like, forget it. And then I find myself again looking at athletes. I'm just like, why are you not jumping so high? And they're like, that bar looks high. I put a bungee up the same height. They're grinding with ease. So, so for me, it's just, you got to make sure these athletes are focusing on the task at hand, not just there for the hell of it, but also, making it to where, because I ask my kids all the time, hey, listen, do you want a bar or a bungee? And they say bungee. I'm like, all right, cool. If they say bar, my first question to them is, listen, at the higher heights, is it going to bother you? Or are you okay with this? Like, you got to be able to jump these bars no matter what the height is. Like, I don't want to see you look at the bar and go, oh my God, like it's high. It's like, it is what it is. And, it just really comes down to the athlete. But I really think that to become that great athlete, You just have to build that awareness of what you're doing. And the one thing that I always tell my athletes all the time, and some coaches are going to say, well, that makes no sense. But truthfully, I will obviously question you is you as an athlete should be able to coach yourself in a sense to
Sure.
where if I'm sitting with my iPad, and I've done this plenty of times, I won't even show them the video and I won't get many feedback. I'll say, okay, tell me what you felt. What was wrong about that jump? And it's gotten to the point where a lot of my athletes can literally tell me what it is that I'm going to tell them. And I love that because now it means you aren't just jumping the jump. You're
Right.
actually thinking, doing things. And then when you go off that pit, you can actually memorize that jump from start to finish and tell me, you know what, coach, on my fifth step, I wasn't really straight on it. I kind of pushed on my curve. So I was wider. And then bam, I was next to the bar. Some athletes, they'll go, well, I don't know. And then you're like, well, I want to get some feedback because I can tell you things, but the question is, are you able to comprehend them and execute, or are you just listening to it and just hoping for it to fix over time? And
Right.
that's the biggest thing. It goes back again to you focusing on the drills and understanding why we're doing them. And I mean, I know a lot of my kids get annoyed at it sometimes, but I think every single practice, and even if it's the same drill we've been doing over and over again, I'll still explain why we're doing it and then still ask them at the end, what did you learn from this drill? And, at a point, it's like, coach, we know what we're doing. But at the end of the day, what I'm trying to get out of you is to be able to tell me what I'm going to tell you before I even tell you.
Yeah.
And I think that is what makes an athlete go from average to great, from great to elite.
Yeah. Well, that self-awareness is huge because, like you said, you can create disciples. You can create little copies of you. Like you said, okay, I tell kids, I say, I've just recently, I've fallen in love with the single arm. So I'm like, which is crazy because I was a double arm, but I'm like, I'm starting to understand it a lot better after, having been through the mill a few times. And I've done some Zoom classes where I've taught, takeoff mechanics. And I'm like, I don't just go, okay, gather and get your arms back and jump. Traditional American pass, exactly what I did. I was a stand, 11 steps, eventually turned into 9. Then I started, I like some of these European things. I like to get rolling because I wasn't real fast. So if I can carry more speed in there by cheating a little, why don't I just roll into this 9 step and boom? So all of a sudden I'm like, well, why don't I just get this arm up here? And it's like, as I'm getting older, I'm thinking about doing some masters competitions. I'm 59 now. I'm like, I demonstrate the single arm and it seems pretty easy for me. So I'm like, oh, maybe I'll do that. But what I tell them is I go, look, I can give you at least 5 categories of arm drives that are all completely different. Fosbury reversed his arms. The Europeans would be in the same position that Fosbury was. Instead of reversing, they would just continue. So I'm like, you've got the single arm, you've got the Fosbury single arm, you've got a double arm, traditional gather and jump, and then you've got the European whip back, I call it double arm, where they fling that arm back there and then get the other one to come through. I've also seen little hybrids that are kind of a gather and then both arms go, but they separate. I'm like, okay, I'm all right with that. As long as I get those arms up there somehow, I'm pretty happy. And that I've got my preferences, but I don't ever say, you have to do this. I've even seen, I'm sure you've seen some recently, both arms up at takeoff, where at heel strike, both arms are already up. And I'm like, and I'm looking at it going, how can that work? And then I watch a girl jump 5'9" on Instagram. I'm like, she jumped 5'9" with no arms. I'm like, how does that work? And I'm like, well, she's far out. She's extra tall because her arms are up and that knee came across. So my thing has been, if you look at all of these jumps, the knee drive is up and across and turns your back to the bar, and then you deal. I'm like, your arms, not that they're not unimportant. I'm like, they're very important. I want you to get your center mass up as high as possible. You can either have them down low and drive them up there, or they can already be up there and you can drive another one up to it. I don't really care. Once we get up there, I teach them it's okay to be real tall and then go to small, right? But it's like, I to your point, I don't sit there and go, this is the only way. And you want to get athletes, I'll empower them. I had a kid jump just the other day. I said, I put the bar at like 4 feet and I go, we're going to try every arm jump there is. I made him do a Fosbury. I made him do a single arm. I made him do a gather and I did a whip back. He did all of them. And I go, which one did you like best? And he goes, I really felt good doing this. And I said, that's kind of what I saw too. But I just wanted to go through it and just see, because you never know. Maybe all of a sudden that single R comes up and they run up and they look great. You're like, God, that's easy. Let's switch to that. So I'm not going to sit there and say, oh yeah, well that's the way I did it. That's the only way to go, because I've watched too much film. I've seen too many guys do different things completely and have same results. Zhu
Exactly.
Chenhua, you wouldn't know the name, but Zhu Chenhua was the world record holder in '84, jumped 7'9.5", and he was literally what I would call the spinning chair. He was super fast. He would drive his knee up, and that was it. And he would just go and just sail up and over. No hip punch, no layout, no nothing. And I was like, that was the way I learned how to jump when I was 12. You ran up, drove your knee up, you turned, you sat, and you flew over. I'm just like, how does that work? I'm like, well, he's 6'4", and he's about 160 pounds, and he's fast. I'm like, if you drive that knee up and ride it, you can do that. Well, hey, Devin, we're getting late here. It's getting close to 8. My wife's giving me those let's eat dinner symbol, which I've come to know and love. I greatly appreciate your time. We had, those of you listening, we had a couple adjustments we had to make. So we're both running on those difficult coaching schedules. So we had to ship the time back once or twice, and then we had traffic, and so we got it all worked out. But I loved having you. I love watching your stuff with your kids. I love hearing the way your brain works, and I'd be honored to have you on again in the future. We gotta stay in touch.
I appreciate you having me on here and taking the time to go with my adjustments. I've looked forward to the podcast in the future. This was a great thing to do. I hope anybody listening to this gets some good insight on just how coaches' brains work and just what we think and feel. But no, this was a blast, honestly. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Hey, really appreciate you, Devin. Keep up the great work, and let me know if you want to start jumping and you want to set of eyes. You're only 25. You want to jump 7'2.5" and go to those Olympic trials. You let me know. It's out of nowhere, but I want to coach somebody. Yeah, I want to coach somebody to go to the trials. That's one of those little things in my head where I'm like, okay, I've coached all these levels. I'm like, don't have anybody at the trials yet, so I'm always looking.
Might hear from you then.
All right, sir. Have a good one, and we'll check in with you later. Thanks, man.
And that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Raise the Bar here with Troy Haynes. I am your host, signing off. I want to say thank you again to Devin Bradham, the Penn State graduate who is now coaching on many different levels out in New Jersey. We just were 3 hours apart, had a great time, but we're getting late, so we're wrapping it up. And hopefully we'll be talking again. I did make an offer to Devin if he wanted to try to get to the U.S. Olympic trials in the high jump, because he's knocking on the door to the qualifying standard to be his coach. So I hope he follows up on that. Until next time, Troy Haynes of Raise the Bar Sky High and Fly Jump Camp signing off.